everyone, and welcome. Thanks for joining today's PPCC 26 workshop preview. I'm Lyman Goodrich. I'm your host for this today's session. PPCC 26 takes place this October 27th through 29th at the MGM Grand in Las Vegas, with full-day workshops on Sunday the 25th, Monday the 26th, and Friday the 30th. This preview series is designed to give you a sneak peek into the workshop content you'll experience at PPCC 26, presented by the same speakers you'll be meeting in person in Las Vegas. Today's webinar will be recorded and will be available on the workshop's detail page on the PPCC 26 website. If you haven't registered yet, stay with us until the end and we'll tell you how to save $150 off your registration using a speaker discount code. With that, it's my pleasure to introduce today's presenter, Reza Rad. Take it away.
Thanks, Lyman, for the introduction. Hello, everyone. Great to see you all here. Good morning, good evening, good afternoon, whatever time you are watching this. I'm Reza Rad. I'm going to do a full-day workshop at PPCC 26. I have been in previous events as well. It is a fantastic event if you want to get to know peers in the Power Platform community. If you want to get up to date, stay up to date with what's happening. It is fun. It is learning. It is networking. It's fantastic. So I'm looking forward to be in the event again this year in Las Vegas. Now, my workshop, which is DAX and Calculation in Power BI, is happening on the Sunday. So we'll spend a really nice Sunday together in Las Vegas. This would be a workshop for anyone who want to do data analytics using Power BI, but deep into the calculation level, but because data analytics is not just visualization. Now, before I talk about what my workshop is about, let me introduce myself. I'm Reza Rad. I do Power BI and Microsoft Fabric consulting for pretty much like 20 years, long before Power BI be called as Power BI, since the day that it was in Excel, in SQL Server. I'm a Microsoft MVP and Microsoft Regional Director. I run Radacat company, which we deliver a lot of training, a lot of consultation to other businesses about Power BI and Microsoft Fabric. And I have written 13 books on this subject. One of those books is actually DAX in Power BI Simplified, which most of the contents of this workshop is coming from that book. And I actually updated it so that it is relevant with what is happening right now in the market as well, considering that we have AI now that helps us writing calculations. So if you haven't worked with Power BI a lot, this still is a good workshop for you, because the most important part of Power BI solution is writing the calculations, writing DAX formulas. DAX is a language that can be challenging sometimes because it is an expression language, but the way that it works is different than Excel formula, a lot different than Excel formula, because here we have the context of tables, models, relationship between tables, whereas in Excel, formulas are mainly related to the cells that you are writing your formula. It is also different than programming languages, because in programming languages, you have a block of programming. It begins and ends at some certain area, whereas in DAX, because it's an expression language, it is different. So you can call DAX as combination of few languages together, like Excel formula. If you combine it with C#, if you combine it with SQL query language, you put them in a mixer, you'll have DAX as a language. This language is not just for Power BI. It is also for SQL Server analysis services, for analysis services, Azure analysis services, and for Excel Power Pivot. So you could use the same thing in all of these areas. Of course, these days, AI, ChatGPT, Cloud, Code, GitHub Copilot, they can all help you to go and write your DAX formula. However, the formula that they write may not be always the best formula. It may not produce the best performance. Sometimes it creates a measure or a calculation that takes long time to process because it is not written the best way. So from my point of view, from someone who is doing consulting on Power BI, training on Power BI, I think still learning DAX is an essential skill for anyone working with Power BI. You have to understand how the language works. You have to understand different aspects of it, so that even if you go and get help from AI to go and build this, it still builds it in a way that is performant. It is in a way that is delivering the results that you want. So what we are going to talk about in that workshop starts from the beginner level, so you don't need any background. We'll start from what is DAX, what is this structure of this language, what are different types of calculation you can create. We have measure, we have calculated column, we have calculated table. And recently, that is the part that I'm saying that the content of this is much more up to date than the book that I mentioned. Recently, we have a special type of calculated column, which is user context aware calculated column, which is like totally different from the way that calculated column was in the past. So we'll talk about all of these different types of calculations, what they are. We'll go through examples of this. This is a demo lab heavy workshop. So you'll expect to have your laptop bringing. You have Power BI desktop installed. We will provide a data set so that you can download that data set. We'll be going through lab exercises. First, I'll be showing you that demo of how this works. You'll be seeing it. And if you have any questions, you would ask me. Then we will go through that lab exercise together. You will be actually doing that. Me and other actors that we have in that workshop, we will be moving around, and if you have any questions, we will take your questions and make sure that you understand that subject and implemented that lab exercise fully. So we'll talk about different types of calculations. Then we'll talk about different types of functions that we have in DAX. We have functions that are for filtering data. We have functions that are for aggregating the data. There is a really important aspect in DAX called context of evaluation of your expression. This can be a raw context or filter context. Understanding this is a critical item to understand DAX as a language in general. When you understand that, you can write your formulas much better. We'll talk about different categories of functions as well. There are some functions that are scalar functions. They just return one single value. They are useful to get the result in a measure. And there are some functions that returns a table. We call them tabular functions. Tabular functions are not necessarily used in a measure directly, but they are wrapped inside another function, or they might be used as a virtual table inside a measure to give you a result that you use in the rest of your expression. We will talk about variables. We will talk about situations that, for example, you run a table variable, a table function, you store the result of that into a variable for the rest of your expression. You would use that variable and calculate something based on that. We'll talk about some of the most important functions in DAX, such as calculate, such as iterator functions. We jump into time intelligence expressions. We'll talk about how parameters help in this, so that you don't have to, like, every time you want to make a change, like, for example, you are getting last 1 month data compared to this month, but then your users coming and asking, what if I want last 3 months of data compared to this month? You don't go and change it yourself in the code. You make it parametric in a way that that user can change that parameter value themselves. So there are a lot of things we are going to talk about. All of these are practical. All of these are things that you would be able to use straight away after the workshop in your day-to-day work, in your projects. You will have access to all of these materials. Now, I'm going to show you one quick example of this. Of course, all of that 1 day of content, I cannot show that to you in this small session, but I'm going to show you one of those examples, which is a time intelligence example. So if we go over to my screen, please. So here you can see that I have a Power BI desktop solution. We will be working with kind of similar solution to this, but it would be a little bit bigger, because here I have just few tables. I have a semantic model, which has sales table, customer table, date table, and product table. These are all related. We'll talk about also the relationship functions and how they work. In my case, date and sales table are related. So I'm going to build a visual here, a table visual. I'll start with that. From the fact sales, I'll bring sales amount, which would be some of the sales amount. And from the date table, I'll bring calendar year and English month name. And I'm going to sort these so that sales amount comes as the last column over here. Let me increase the font size. It makes it much better for you to see it over this session. Not 250, 25 is much better. Okay, so here it is. So I have a visual that shows the calendar year, 2005, all the way to whatever year I have, 2008 in this semantic model, in this data set, and month starting from July, going all the way to July 2008. The reason I started from July is that I don't have any sales information before that, but the months are sorted. You see July, August, September. And then I have the sales amount itself as a value. So this is the actual sales amount that I'm seeing here. Let me also format that properly as a currency value with 2 decimal places. That would make it much easier to read. So this is the actual sales amount. Now, let's say I'm looking forward to get a year-to-date sales, and I'm talking about calendar year-to-date. Calendar year-to-date means that in every situation that I'm looking at this, let's say, for example, November 2005, when I'm looking at this, I want to get sales accumulated from January of that year, because it's a calendar year-to-date, from January of that year till that month. Or when I'm looking at September, it would be from January of that year till September. Accumulation of all of those values. There are a number of ways you can do that. One of the ways is using time intelligence calculations in DAX. Time intelligence calculations in DAX, in order to get them working, you first need to have a date table, which we already have a date table. This date table should have 1 record per day. So here you can see I have my date table. It has 1 record per day. It should have a data type column. Here it is. You should not have any dates missing. And then you have to inform Power BI that this is your date table. And we'll do that with clicking here. We'll go into calendar options, and we mark it as date table. Now, here, there are actually 2 ways to do that. Recently, we have custom calendars, which is much better way to set this up, especially helpful when you want to set up your financial calendar, fiscal calendar, or you want to specify a certain calendar that is only for your own business. We will go and build that. And we are going to talk about that in the workshop. In this session, this is like too short to talk about that. The other way, the standard way that we do it so far, is to mark it as a date table. And when I do that, I choose what is the date field that I have here. Here it is my date field. I'll save that. It is done. You don't see any changes here, but this now informed Power BI that this is our date table. So any calculations, any formula we write from now on will have this output correctly. Before this, if you have written any calculations, it would have shown you an incorrect result. So now I'm going to the sales table. I can create my measure here, but usually we prefer to create our measures in a different table. We call it a measure table. So I'll create a measure table. I'm going to call it measures, and it is a blank table. So I'm using the blank function for it. We will go through all of these exercises in the lab. So you will see how to create the measure table, why it is good to create it this way. So now that my measure table is created, I can go and create my measure over here, which is going to be sales year to date. So for sales year to date, I can create it this way. I can use a calculate function. Using the calculate function, it's a function that asks for expression and a filter. Expression is whatever you are calculating. In our case, it is sum of the sales amount column we are calculating. And then the filter, in this case, the filter should be something that works and find that dates year-to-date period. In my case, it is going to be from first of that calendar year we are in until the date that we are using. Now, time intelligence functions are helpful here. One of them is dates YTD. Dates YTD, and you can see the definition of that, is getting a date field, and it returns a set of dates in that current year up to that current date. So what I need to provide for this function to work is the date field in my table. And date field in my table is called full date alternate key. So I provide that, I close the parentheses, and I close the parentheses for calculate. Again, in our workshop, we will talk about the structure of this, where you open the parentheses, how do you pass parameters to each of these functions, how do you specify all of these, how do you troubleshoot? If you get an error, how do you fix those errors? So once I have written this, I'm going to hit the check mark. This is the calculation added already. It is a measure. You cannot see the value of that in the data tab. Data tab is just a place that you can write the formula. You can write the formula in the report tab as well, but the data tab is usually an easier place to write it. Now I'm going to add that measure, and here you can see this measure added under the measure table. One of the benefits of creating this was to have a separate table with all of these. Then I'll bring that over here. Let me format it as a currency value first. So this is formatted as a currency value. I'll bring it over here. Now you see the result appearing here. Let me make it 2 decimal places, because otherwise this would be quite a lot. If it gets my number 2 as a decimal places here, it would be good. So here you go. So 2. So as you can see here, this actually shows me the accumulation of the value. For the July year-to-date value is same as July because there is no sales before that. But for August, this value is actually accumulation of the 2 values before that. Or for September, this is accumulation of the values before that. For October, again, these 4 months together is that. And you see that this restarts in January next year because it is a calendar year. That is why it works like that. So if I actually duplicate this page and if I change this chart to be something like this, let's say I change it to be a column chart, not a stacked column chart, and I'm going to use English month name also in the axes. So something like this. And this is sum of sales amount. Let's bring that year-to-date measure also in the axis. So let's change this to clustered column chart. So here you can see that better. The light blue color is the actual sales of that month. The darker blue is the accumulation of those values as a year-to-date, which accumulate all the way to December and then restarts again in January. You see this change as we go. And then in 2008, because July is the last month that we have values in it. After that, it's always the same value. So we managed to create that accumulation. Now, when you have this, you can even extend this. You can say, what is my year-over-year comparison and things like that. That could be another measure. So I could create like another measure here. And in this measure, I can call it year-over-year percentage, and in this percentage I could say whatever the sales of this year is compared to the last year. We could use functions such as same period last year to calculate the previous year value, then compare it with this year value. These are the samples that we will go through that workshop. We will talk about like month by month analysis. We will talk about yearly analysis. These are just the time intelligence portion of our workshop. We will have a lot of common scenarios to talk about. I just wanted to show you a few of these, how these are going to work. So I hope this gave you a good overview of what you are going to expect in this workshop. I highly recommend you to go and sign up for it. We will be going through a lot of examples together. It would be a nice Sunday to spend in Las Vegas. After that, these are things that you could use in your day-to-day job, and I can't wait to get to see you all over there.
Thank you, Reza. Thank you very much for that preview. And thank you, everyone, for joining us today. We hope this session gave you some insight into what you'll experience during Reza's full-day workshop at PPCC 26. If you're interested in any of our other workshops at PPCC 26, you can check out the QR code that's popped up there. And I think if we lose the lower third, I think we're losing some. There we go. Thanks, Terry. Check that out. You can see some of the other previews that we'll be offering over the next week. If you haven't registered yet, there's plenty of time to join us in Las Vegas. When you register, though, use the speaker discount code, bam, right there, and that'll save you $150 off your conference registration. Please join us in Las Vegas, where there'll be thousands and thousands of Microsoft technology professionals from all around the world. You'll learn directly from Microsoft's engineering and project teams, as well as some of the most respected experts from the globe around the world from Microsoft technology community. Thanks again for joining us, and hope you had a great day, and we'll see you in Las Vegas.